So what we're going to first start with is our toast. Casey is going to jump in and give us our opening toast. And then guys, we are going to jump full on into this conversation. Get your chat room ready, get your hand ready to raise your hand, and we'll get started. Miss Casey.
Thank you very much. Well, first, it's an honor to be in the room with all of these great speakers, knowledgeable folks from the veterinary world. Dr. Peter Brown, who I work with a lot, who's always kind of inspirational and spearheads a lot of new and innovative ways of thinking. And I'm excited to have this conversation tonight because, as Catherine kind of mentioned it, as a veterinary technician, I think in a world of veterinary medicine, I feel like we're just starting to get some of the attention that this profession deserves within the veterinary community. I think it's a little bit of a mix of COVID and of salaries and of all kinds of different things that are happening that have really allowed not only veterinary practices, but even the industry to start to pay closer attention to the influence and the importance of the veterinary technicians within the community. So I just wanted to say how excited I was when Catherine and I were talking about having an opportunity to really dive in and have deeper discussions about what's going on in the world and what we can do to make it better, and just also reinforce how important the veterinary technicians are. I would say all of the veterinary staff. I'm not just calling veterinary technicians, but all of the staff within the veterinary hospital, and just how important it is to just helping our clients and the patients that we serve. So I just wanted to say cheers. My only water bottle, because we're in a new house. We don't even have our dishes unpacked yet, but cheers. And thank you for having us.
It's funny you mentioned COVID, because I actually, as I've been having conversations with many people around the profession, the challenges we're facing were well before COVID. And I feel like people have now said that the pain point has now been truly felt, but the challenges have been building over time. And I'm excited to have us really kind of dive into that. So this first part, we're not meaning to have a complaint session. We want to have a real understanding of what are the challenges currently facing. And I kind of want to break this into pieces. So Jamie plays an interesting role. And so I'm going to have her come in twice, but I'm going to break her up just a little bit. She owns a practice or 3 practices, and she is a veterinary technician. So she plays the role of both sides on this, and we'll get then to her role in the industry. But, can you walk through us, Jamie, like what are in your practice? What are the challenges that your veterinary technicians are facing today?
Sure. Thank you, Catherine. So I would say that I would love to tell you guys my practice is perfect and amazing, and there are no problems and there are no issues, or everybody loves their job. And, unfortunately, that's just not what it is. So I would like to say that my staff is happy and everyone is bringing their A game every day. And, in an ideal world, that's what we all want. What the technicians in practice are facing, and not in my practice, is lack of utilization, which we all know. We've all heard, just like Catherine said, that, every panel that talks about this, we're preaching to a demographic that we are trying to retrain this demographic on how to utilize technicians. And it's not the technicians who need the lectures or the CE or whatever, because they're not the ones that don't want to be utilized, and so underutilization, low wages, maybe we're burnout, maybe we have compassion fatigue, maybe we don't know the difference in the 2 of them. COVID really put us all in a bad situation as employers, because in addition to dealing with your normal day-to-day struggle, we also dealt with a lot of health issues from our clients and our staff. And it really, like you said, Catherine, put us in a eye-opening situation where some of us lost people due to COVID restrictions and things like that. Some people left their practice, some people moved on to other things, some people decided they didn't want to be in practice anymore. So we're all dealing with a lot of the same things, but I would say our number one things that employers are dealing with are, lack of utilization. Your technicians, we want to pay them a fair wage. and people truly just being tired, you know.
Tired is a big one. So I pivot to you, Dr. Brown is the only doctor on this entire call. You own, you said 9 practices. What are your technicians saying? Is it similar to what Jamie is seeing in her practice?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities to Jamie, and I certainly see this across the profession. I guess I would almost step back for a second and just say some of the challenges the profession's facing, and then kind of how, we'll get into a little bit more of like my vision of the role of technicians. But I think one thing that, Catherine, you said earlier, this started before the pandemic, and we were seeing, in some ways you could view this as a positive or it can be a challenge, right? But the role of pets in all of our pet parents' families, and this increasing role and this increasing bond. And I've been a veterinarian for 30 some years now, and watching the change in the relationship. And so not only are there more pets out there, but there's a much stronger bond. And as that bond increases, the demands from our clients have gone up through the roof. There's more fear, there's more desires, they need more education, they need all of this. And then we have a shrinking doctor population, between retirements and not enough graduates, and people only working 2 days a week, and all these things factors. And so it's created this crisis in the industry where we're not taking care of our pets. And I think that's probably the biggest thing we face. And we'll talk about some of the solutions that I'm trying right now. Our biggest challenge with our LBTs in Washington, their LBTs, is we just can't find enough of them. And so, and every time I hire one, I'm really stealing one from another practice. And so, which is good for me, but it's not good for the profession, right? So the challenges that we're facing really is more of a lack of technicians, because we can't function without them. So like, how do we have them, but we just don't have, it's not like they're growing on trees. And how do we get them? So I feel like within our practices, we can always do better, but there's a lot of, we need to figure out how to utilize them even better than we are right now.
I love that you admitted that we're stealing from other practices, because I think that's its own pandemic in itself. I mean, because we don't have the pool of folks, and we're going to talk here in a little bit about how you have a unique solution to that. I don't mean to keep teasing it, but I'm telling you, my mind's been blowing about this one. So I do want to jump just briefly and allow all of you to be putting also into the chat as we're moving forward of what you're experiencing. But now let's kind of jump to the industry kind of perspective. And we are very fortunate because of the role that Jamie does play with Georgia and with NAVTA, as well as with Shannon and her role that she plays in North Carolina. I'd love to hear from both of you on your perspectives on what you're seeing the voice of the profession is also saying as the biggest challenges that they are facing. So we'll go Jamie first, then Shannon, and then don't worry, Casey, I'm coming to you in a minute.
Again, same as what I had said before, and touching on what Peter said as well. The issues that we're facing were long before COVID. COVID just brought everything to, kind of a tipping point for a lot of us. I've always strived to pay my staff well and utilize my staff. My clinic is not the clinic for everyone because of how our practice runs and how we operate. We went 24/7 a year ago, and it was not something that all of our staff wanted us to do. It was something that we had talked about for 20 something years. We were able to do it. And it brought to light for me, in addition to being president of Georgia's Tech Association, that we all want different things. We're all trying to, make our voice heard. We're all trying to make sure that, people are listening to us, that we're getting our points across, that we're, getting better pay, we're being utilized, that, someone's, just happy in their overall career and what's going on. And, our big points that we're dealing with are the same, no matter if it's in Georgia or Washington or North Carolina. we're all dealing with the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing over and over, right? So it's wages, utilization, burnout, and compassion fatigue. And it doesn't matter if it's Georgia or Washington, it's all the same, you know, when it comes down to it. So.
And I think that's really valid. I know Shannon's working on getting her connection back, but Casey, let's run to you because you have a unique perspective here on out there, Shannon. Shannon, do you want to jump in, unmute yourself and jump in on your perspective? Anything different than what?
Yeah, sorry. And of course,
Amy?
the like most inopportune time the internet starts like freezing again. But yeah, I think the biggest things that we hear here are some of the same things that you guys are mentioning. I know the pay, obviously, compassion fatigue and burnout. I think big like lack of recognition and lack of clear roles with like scope of practice type things. And another one that I know is a problem in our state is really just having our voice being heard. Like there are organizations like our medical board that is making decisions that impact us, but they don't get our opinion, and there are no technicians kind of speaking up or even able to voice their opinion for things that are governing us. And I think obviously that is a big problem.
So,
Go ahead, Jamie.
all right. So in Georgia, we opened up our Practice Act years ago and updated our Practice Act. It had not been opened in over 10 years. And there was an empty seat on our state board for a technician. And that seat has been empty for 10 years. So I went to the board and started a 2-year process with the board and their support to put a credentialed technician on the board. And during COVID in March of 20, we were able to finally have a technician on our board to give us a voice and give us, the ability to have input into these decisions. But it was a long, hard battle. But the veterinarians that were on the board were very supportive of it. But it's a long battle. And then you get, ran down with these things that you're thinking that you're almost kicking a dead horse. And is it ever going to happen? And, are we going to come to an agreement or what's going to happen? But, it's a long battle. And a lot of us in our positions on our state and national level, it's a volunteer position, right? So it's a volunteer position. You're giving your time in addition to your busiest life that you have. But it's really hard to be able to get people involved on that level and keep them engaged with your state and your national association.
So I think that's really important because I think that one of the things that you're saying and also what Shannon is saying, and also that has happened here at the Bridge Club is we've brought, opportunities moving forward, but the people that are making the decisions about those opportunities are in fact not including the voice of the profession as it comes forward. And one of the things that I've been, probably, and again, I am not a technician, I am not a veterinarian, but I have been really surprised that as we talk about the veterinary shortage, and I don't quote that meaning as I don't believe it, I do believe we have one, we're also putting all the burden of that shortage on the shoulders of technicians. And then that's even more for the technician to take a hold of. And how are we addressing the challenge? And then you look at Peter and Peter says, but then I'm robbing from Peter to pay Paul, no pun intended, in order to be able to keep a practice moving forward. So we will get to an answer there. And I love that everyone is talking. Pay is a really important thing. I promise you, we are going to get to it as we come forward. I do want to quickly have Casey jump in though. So Casey has an interesting role on the industry side. And Casey, I did not put this actually as a teaser for you as we talked about some of the things that I was going to ask you, but I would love to talk about the students because you have a team that also talks at the university level, correct?
Yes.
So what are the students saying, the tech students saying right now?
Well, I think so. Two things. One, I just wanted to point out, I spend a lot of time working with veterinary technicians, nurses, they're referred to in other countries. This isn't a thing just in the US. It's a global thing, meaning that everywhere there is a practice, there is a misuse of, I would say a misuse, meaning that technicians are either underpaid and kind of overstretched or they're underutilized I think what can be really really disappointing sometimes is that you feel like you're not being used the way you could be used because of just poor management of the practice, or sometimes doctors need to be retrained a little bit. And that's something that I've seen as well. So, so it's definitely a global issue. You could pick any country and we have the same conversations with practices, with doctors, about kind of the same issues. And then I think from a student perspective, I think students who are graduating today, and I saw some comments in here, I think the folks who've been in practice for a long time, we have a lot more, I wouldn't say patience, but we have a lot more patience to kind of hope that things improve, get better, the pay is there, the hours are there, I can have work-life balance, I don't get burnout. What I find with newer graduates is that they don't have that patience anymore. And I think I saw someone in the chat saying, hey, well, you know, if I can go work at as a pharmacy technician and make $3 more an hour and not have to take my job home with me, I might go and do that, even though I've gone to school for something else. And in fairness, I left practice to go work for Idexx. And this kind of sounds, I don't know, but this is true. I got tired of working for a great guy who ran a great practice, but I was like, I don't want to work for the guy who has a nice car and can afford a house. I want to be able to afford my own house. And that made me actually shift from being in practice to going into kind of the corporate, you know, business side of things. So, so that was a big long ramble because it's really late at night for me. And like I mentioned, we're in the middle of a big move, which is why I'm only drinking water and not wine right now. But I think the one thing I think that is happening that hasn't happened before, and this is the nice thing about being in veterinary medicine for a long time, is that I see a movement, and it's a stronger movement than there ever has been before. And I think that corporate accounts, business corporations like Idexx, we're suddenly recognizing that, you know what, we need to start to pay attention to the technician community and help to bolster that. I think corporate accounts is recognizing how important they are. Corporate accounts is a thing now, whether you love it or not, you work for them or you're not, they're out there. So I feel like we're on this like little cusp of where I've seen changes in veterinary medicine over the last 30 years. And this is one that feels kind of good for veterinary technicians if we can keep doing those things that are happening. Like Jamie, like, you know, you banged on the door and you said, I need to get on that board, and you were persistent about it. And I think if that persistence continues, we will see some positive change. But in the meantime, everybody kind of suffers while we're going through that change.
So I think all this is, first of all, thank you for being so candid as to why you ended up leaving practice and going into corporate. I think it's really critically important for everyone to understand everyone has a different journey as we go through it. And the reality of the situation is even, and she is not here to kind of express it because she's actually with Sava right now, is that our own chief medical officer lost 6 people in the course of 3 weeks. And in her own practice. And she knew most of them were coming, but she didn't expect them all at one time. And I think that's the part that's been kind of crazy, is the understanding that people finally reach their moment and they're like, I can't even. And when you say we're in a movement moment, we have an empowered workforce. And I know we've got many people on here who would agree right now, is that their voice means more than ever before. So if practices aren't willing to kind of step forward, they're going to find themselves in a whole lot of hurt really, really soon, unfortunately. I do want to kind of, so I'm seeing a lot on pay, I promise, get there. I do want to quickly get to the utilization point though. And I do want to quickly also share, get Dr. Brown to share his story. But Shannon, I don't know if you have Wi-Fi. Yes, you do. Okay. I do want to kind of turn to you specifically on utilization. Then I want to jump over to Jamie on how she is looking at utilization of the technicians, and have you jump in a second if you can, Shannon.
Yeah, so one big thing I think with utilization is that there's just so much variation there. It really just depends on what state you're in and what you're allowed to do. And even as I mentioned before, sometimes there are some blurry lines there. And so you're not really sure what you're allowed to do or not. And it may depend on, who you're working for, what practice you're in. One practice down the road, they'll let you do these things, but the other one they won't, because it's not black and white in your practice act. So there's just some huge discrepancies out there. We do have a document, which I can put a link, I've got it in our box, which is a little old. I think it was 2019 put out by the AVMA. So it's a little outdated, but it shows.
We got it from Ed Carlson.
Yeah,
He's
Ed Carlson gave it to us.
Fixing it.
Yes, so it's not posted on their website now, but I'll put it in just a second when I'm not talking. But it kind of shows just that variation from state to state and what technicians or assistants can do. But for your most up-to-date info, you can usually look at your state board's website and see there. But again, there's so much that's not really spelled out that it's hard to know.
I think that's really powerful. And I do also want to say that as you're looking at your utilization, we would be remiss if we didn't indicate education is key for all of us. So if you don't have some of the skills that you want to have, there are a lot of amazing free CE programs that you can be a part of. We're also going to, I think, include a couple links as we send the video out that are available. Idexx obviously has some amazing education as well. So please always remember, don't just always rely on your employer to help move you forward. You too should be empowered with your own education, but not everything needs to cost money in order for you to be able to do it. So I think that's really important. I am going to loop back. I'm going to ask Julie Legrid to quickly unmute herself. I want to go back to the student thing really quick because Julie actually works with Vet Tech Prep. And I'd love for to share anything, what you're hearing from students as they're coming into the marketplace. What are they also sharing that they're kind of experiencing? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I do appreciate that we have the other student perspective as well.
That's all right. I'm like Linda and Rebecca, where I'm long time vet tech, 40 years-ish. We'll just go there. So I deal with actually both vet students and vet tech students in my role and consulting. They actually are very, very excited, the technician students coming out of school, but when they get into the practice, that's when they're not sure because they're not asked or they're not allowed to do things. I think they're frustrated. I also think that's why we're losing so many technicians out there is because we're not being utilized to our full potential. And if we were utilized, the pay would go up because we'd bring in more money. I still, to this day, I've always said it, I think veterinarians, even though there's a shortage, if you keep your techs around, you can make more money. There's practices out there that have one veterinarian with 15 technicians and they're making bank. I hate to say it, but it's like, and it's a family atmosphere. They've been at this practice for 35 plus years, some of them. The vet students, they're not exposed to us like they should be. They see the instructors or, the technicians within the universities that are hanging out and doing all the stuff, but that's not a typical situation. So when they get into practice, they're not comfortable asking the technician to do all of that stuff that they've seen the technicians do, which I think that we need some education on both sides. Even when you put what we've done in school, the skill set and all of that, doctors don't understand that. They worry about what they're responsible for, what they've graduated with, what their knowledge base is. They don't understand what we've kind of come out of school with and graduated with. So I think there's a lot of education on both sides because we don't always pay attention to what they need to be educated on either. I think that AAVMC needs to play a bigger role in the education process because a lot of the skills veterinarians shouldn't be being taught. It should be going to the technicians. I know there's a lot of things out there and they're trying to fill their seats, both sides. Vet tech programs are not full. Some of them are, most of them are not. And there's a reason why. My youngest son was wanting to be a tech. Guess what? He's heard me say or hear me talk about too much of the salary and the debt that goes along with the technician aspect too. So he changed. He like, I don't want to deal with that. So sorry, I could go on all night. You know me, Catherine.
No, but you bring up a really important point. And so this is where I want Jamie to jump back in. And because Jamie in her role has always wanted to be the voice and help empower people to have their voice. So Jamie, can we dive in when it comes to a veterinary technician in a practice, how can they be utilized more?
Sure. So Catherine, in a lot of these conversations, I will relate back to my current practice, and that one of the reasons we have been able to be as successful as we are is that we do utilize our technicians. We utilize them to be able to allow our veterinarians to do the most that they can do, but also allowing our technicians to do their job. They do it well. They're rock stars. They're amazing. But that's our practice culture. So we are a tech-driven practice. When people come in and we're interviewing, that's part of the conversation that we'll have, is that we're a tech-driven practice and that our technicians are truly responsible for a large part of our practice growth. So as a technician, that's always had this afforded to me when I'm talking to people about how to try to be able to be utilized in their practice. A lot of times it's truly, having those conversations with your veterinarians and your practice owners, what your skill set is, what you're able to do. A lot of veterinarians are worried about their license. You'll hear them say, oh, that's my license. And that's my license too. It's not just the veterinarian's license. We are truly trying to represent ourselves as technicians, be utilized, save pets, everybody goes home at the end of the day. But the big part of it is finding that practice, or whether you're at a university level, that's willing to let you use your skills. And it may take a while for you to find a practice that's like that, but they're out there. Same as, what Julie said, my son wanted to be in the industry and he hears what happens in life and, what we do every day. And it's not something that he wants to do. But he does see the fact that we have a group of amazing people that are allowed to utilize their skills and truly do, what they were meant to do.
So what is like one or two things that a practitioner can do tomorrow when they walk into practice to be able to do more? What would you recommend?
As the practice owner, or as
a technician walking in and saying, I want to be able to do more in my practice?
So what I would, if it were me in that situation, I would go to my practice owner and I would, say, this is my skill set. This is what I can do. When you're seeing doctors putting catheters, those are things that technicians should be doing, central lines, inducing anesthesia, intubating, things like that. And like Julie said, they don't teach these skills to veterinarians in school. So there's not a class that says how to utilize your technician. I have a new doctor. She's been with us for 6 months. She will flat out tell you they were not taught how to utilize her staff in school. So it's a whole learning curve for her to have confidence in the support staff and know that they're going to be able to help her and allow her to do even more, and they're not going to hurt her pet. And that's what they're worried about, right? They're worried somebody's going to make a mistake and they're going to hurt a pet. Advocate for yourself, tell them what you can do, show them your skill set, or come work for me in Atlanta and you can do that all day long.
So can you tell me how long you've worked with your DVM?
So I actually have been with my DVM for almost 23 years. And I can tell you that we have been together so long that I've been with my husband for 25 years. So it's kind of hand in hand right there, but we would not be the practice that we are unless we utilized our technicians, ER services, day practice, any of those things, but we truly utilize our technicians to the fullest extent.
So based on the conversation I'm seeing in the chat, we need to have just a utilization conversation, because I think needs to be real clarity on what you can and cannot do, and why can you do it in one state and you can't do it in another. But I want to get to the pay. I want it because I know everyone wants to know. So I am going to put Dr. Brown a little bit front and center, and I think everyone should listen very closely to what Dr. Brown has done. So first and foremost, Dr. Brown, you have actually, I'm going to let you tell your story how you want to tell it, and I'll dive in with some additional questions. But you've made a commitment to your technicians. So I don't know if you want to lead with that and then show how you're going to make it happen, or if you want to tell your story of what you've piloted in Seattle.
Yeah, I think we'll kind of walk our way through this. So I guess for me as a practicing veterinarian for 30 some years and had my own small animal practice for a long time, and then decided to branch and either acquire or build some new hospitals. Really, I mean, the key to success is the right team in the building, right? And how do we work together as a team? And so when we think about utilization, I kind of laugh looking at some of the chats, because like I think I reflect back to my first year after I graduated, and I'm like, I depended on Brandy, my LVT, to tell me how to do everything. Like, oh my God, what should I do with this ears? Like I would whisper in her ears, and she was my first year of training. I can't imagine not using my LVTs through that matter onto that. So it's interesting reflecting upon, even though I wasn't trained in school, I certainly depended on my technicians for my success. But as I started looking at the profession, I'm like, well, how do we take care of all the pets out there? How do we take care of all the families that need us? And the fact is, there's not veterinarians growing on a tree, right? And so as we started looking at how do we take care of our pets, how do we help the families that aren't getting care? How do we avoid the 14-hour waits at the emergency clinic for an ear infection? I mean, is that good for the pet? No. I mean, how many of them don't get care? We're in a somewhat of a crisis as a profession. And so as we started looking at that, we utilize our technicians very well. I'm not saying we can't do them more, but we're always about like push to the license, right? And it's so much utilization is around trust. So it's all about, I trust mine to go get those blood work started, to go place that catheter, to draw up the induction drugs, to give that dose of medication when the patient's having a difficult recovery and going through that. Our challenge, like I alluded to earlier, is like, I can't find enough LVTs to leverage my doctors to care for all these families. So stepping back, I said, well, how do we?
So hang on really quick. So I'm going to just help a little bit here. So there is a shortage. So I'm just going to say, huge spoiler alert, and everyone, this is happening elsewhere, right? What you are going to unveil that you're doing, this is happening in other industries.
Correct. Right.
Super smart. Okay, that was my little commentary. So everyone's paying attention. Okay, and go with the big punchline.
Yeah. So we're said so I think of them as extenders, like LVTs. You guys are my extenders. You're my partner in care. You guys help me. Yeah. And I'll talk about this a little bit when I do a toast at the end. So hopefully a little bit of my gin and tonics left, but but I needed to create extenders for the LVTs. And that was kind of the solution for me, is how do I looked at my LVTs. I'm like, what are things that they're doing that we can pull from them to go ahead and leverage my LVTs more? Because I can't just go hire more LVTs. They're just not out there, right? So, and really ultimately, the more I leverage them with a non-licensed assistant, then ultimately I can pay the LVTs more, right? Ultimately, everybody can actually make more because we're leveraging and we're caring for more pets, and the pets are getting better care. So what our approach, and we're doing this at our new hospital right now, is kind of a pilot program, and we're modifying this from some of our existing hospitals also, is we're bringing in hospitality people from outside the industry. We're putting them through an intensive training program to train them as care coordinators to basically help manage this case and help them leverage or extend the LVTs. So having LVTs in each hospital, but having the LVTs not have to be doing a lot of the clerical work that tends to fall to you, and let's utilize your skills. Yeah, you're amazing at talking to clients about bleed control. But if you're talking to clients about bleed control, you're not helping me with a dentistry or helping me manage a diabetic crisis or whatever, and having you to utilize your skills by hiring and bringing in assistants that are very much a client focus role as extenders to the technicians. And ultimately, the goal here is that we care for more families. We take care of more pets. We help, save lives, and really worship this bond. And so the model is, ultimately everybody, my goal in our hospitals is every single employee makes a great living wage, whether it's at an entry level position or not. And we're not there yet, right? I mean, it's a work in progress.
But you've actually stated, what is that good working wage that you have committed for your technicians?
So every single one of our technicians needs to make over $60,000 onto that. I mean, that's just the basics of where they should be at as a base salary.
So again, I just want to put in perspective, different parts of the country, right? Different places.
Yep.
He's in Seattle. And then for these care coordinators that you have brought on board.
Yep.
And what are they paid?
So they're coming in around $24 an hour, right?
So
as their
better than
base.
what the technicians are, correct? Or
currently our technicians are making more than that.
which I would hope so.
Yes. Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
think
and it's really
interest-
all about, like, how do we, as a team, how do we care for more pets? And ultimately, as a team, as we care for more pets, ultimately everybody wins, right? So it's a matter of like utilizing everybody's services the proper way. Through
So I think what's interesting here, and I think this is where everyone can go ahead and start to, ask the questions. And I think there's quite a few that might have some. The idea, what I find fascinating here is bringing in hospitality talent to be able to help circumvent around and support the technician. And making sure that the technician is focused on their ability to be utilized, et cetera, is probably one of the first times. And again, I'd love for anyone to challenge and go at, you can unmute and put your camera on and raise your hand, is the idea that for the first time, I've never heard a practice actually saying, I'm going to do something that's going to help my technicians versus ask my technicians to do more. So I could be very wrong in that. We all know that, I am not a veterinary technician. So I would love to hear more about that. So if we're able to get the salary of the technician 60 higher, I would challenge to go, let's go higher than 60.
100%. Yes.
If we can. And how can we make that happen? I actually think this is the way, one way, a practice, any practice is not just you have 9, but an individual practice could say, how could I change my flow of work in my individual independent practice? So if anyone has any questions, this would be the time now to throw those into the chat. Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
Peter, I have a question for you. When we're talking
Yes.
about this concierge position, we are talking about someone who is separate from your customer service or your receptionist, correct?
Yeah, so we're blending that together a little bit on
Okay.
that, Jamie. And so like one of my pillars is authentically human. Like we're working through this right now, but in our new hospital is we're pulling the phones away from the front desk. We're actually not having a traditional receptionist position there. We're having these care coordinators that basically stay with the case the whole time for our outpatient services. Obviously inpatient are slightly different, but for our outpatient, they're greeting the client at the door, they're bringing them into the room, very small lobby, staying with the pet and then engaging with the LVT and or the doctor through the process, but they're managing the client through this process as a hospitality service. So it's really replacing the receptionists, or they're now we have the phone traffic going through elsewhere. I guess part of this comes to my experience is a lot of people that are great with people aren't necessarily the greatest on the phone, or vice versa. And so like, how do we I think, this is not a reception discussion, but I think, receptionists are often considered the lowest level in the position, and they're not necessarily talented on the phone as they are in person. And so like trying to separate that out a little bit. So the term we're using is care coordinator, but somebody who really takes over a portion of the role to reception. And a lot of this comes back from feedback from our clients and listening to our clients on what their experiences have been like at vet clinics.
So what I do think is interesting here is, and there are some chat in there, and rightly so, because, we're all learning to figure out how to think out of the box. Salaries need to go up, and we need to figure out a way to be able to do that. Understanding that our pool is limited, as you have admitted, if we're stealing from another practice, etc. So I do really appreciate you bringing this forward. I think there's ways for many practices to really be looking at this and understanding, is this an option for them? But again, is there a way that they are committing to raising that salary as opposed to creating more work for their veterinary technicians? So I am really kind of interested in that.
Sorry to
Rebecca has
interrupt there,
questions on-
Catherine, but I think,
go
the
ahead.
key element of that is how many pets or how many dollars of revenue can a doctor generate, right? So, ultimately, the doctor needs to generate more revenue per doctor without compromising client care, team experience, work-life balance, whatever you want to, all of that occurring. But there ultimately has to be more dollars generated into the business to enable us to afford to pay everybody more, right? Which is the ultimate goal, right? Ultimate goal is everybody within the practice makes more. But the only way we do that is working together as a team.
So I think there's a couple questions, and I think this is important because, and I think Liz brought it up best. I think technicians' favorite part of the job is being able to help educate and make people be able to be better pet parents. And does this steal away from that? So I think that is a really important thing. But Rebecca had a question. She said, Dr. Peter, which veterinary consultant coach have you been working with? Meaning, so actually I may need, Rebecca, you may need to unmute and ask the question yourself. I want to make sure I'm asking it correctly because I don't know if it translated. So go for it, Rebecca.
Dr. Peter, Dr. Brown, thank you so much for being here, because there is a lot of energy around this going on. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's
Yes.
awesome. Yes, it's great.
So I would love to say that you are running this and doing this from your gut and your intuition and what you know and have experienced. However, have you been working with a coach and a consultant, which is fine and dandy too. And all you have to say is yes. The key word is you're saying yes, because there's so many people within our industry that have these answers, that have this formula.
Yeah, honestly, the answer is no.
Well,
I
good.
wish I could
That's
give credit for
okay.
somebody, but yeah, I joke about this a lot, but I had an opportunity for about 5 years to travel the world lecturing to veterinarians all over the world. Amazing experience. And went to almost every continent. And I had a lot of long airline flights, and I wrote down a lot of notes in there. And partly I reflected upon the early parts of my career. And I think of the Brandys and the Sharons and the LVTs that I partnered with through some tough times. One of my most impactful moments in my career was we were a 4-doctor practice and very busy. We were trying to hire our 5th doctor. We had 2 doctors quit on the same day. So
Well, and
all of
that's
a
a
sudden I
pivotal
walked in.
point. That's a pivotal point.
Pivotal point.
4 or
Walked in the
5
next
doctors.
morning.
I understand
No
that.
warning. All of a sudden, we got a full book. We're booked out 3 weeks. It forced to say, I vividly remember pulling my LBTs in and saying, okay, guys, we need to do this together. Let's divide and conquer. Obviously, keeping the Practice Act and the law in place this whole time. But as I started thinking about how do we create a unique organization of now 9 hospitals, I really reflected a lot back to that. I don't have all the answers. Like, I don't really know. I know the challenge we're facing in the industry is real. I also want us, the technicians and the doctors, to be the ones that actually come to the solution of this, and not some outside entity that comes in and says, this is how we solve the problem.
So I have a question for you, and Catherine will probably help say, okay, Rebecca, go for it. Is that within the scope of practices and what we can do, there's so much that veterinary technicians can do. So the formally trained one at entry level, we have that essential skills list. That's what we're taught at our 2 or 4 year degrees. And beyond that, we can continue to expand and expand and expand. There's no reason why, and I want to keep our teams healthier together longer, that a veterinary hospital such as Jamie came from, that you can't keep a technician for 23 years in the same practice. That's
Right.
what we all want to do, right? Is continue to grow, expand, support, elevate, give them that career path to stay healthy and sustainable financially, spiritually, economically within your practice. That's the goal, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I know of 2 amazing technicians that have left to go to nursing school in the last 5 years. And that's sad. It's sad that they made that choice, as wonderful. And they love the profession. They loved their job, but the pay wasn't there. That's sad.
Well, you
and
have to
how do we
recognize
solve it?
too, okay, so within veterinary hospitals, the crutch of who we are and what we do within veterinary medicine. So for us that do want to make this currently a lifelong career, as many of us have 40, 25, 30 years, we're still in here kicking. We're still in here growing. Unfortunately, the majority of us are not within veterinary practice. We want to make this, and we see the benefit of having veterinary hospitals that can allow for that career advancement within my practice. Let's say that I'm a veterinary technician, I'm graduating, and I'm eager to create this position for myself. And how am I going to work with my practice manager, with the leadership team on that practice, within that practice, to keep me satisfied and growing for 20 years? That's a big ask.
Yep, it is. And I see this in some of the chat going on. Like, for me, it's not any different than with my doctors. All of my LBTs have different talents, different skills, different desires. Some of them want to be in
Yes.
dentist. Like, I have one of them, Carrie, like, her happy place is dentistry. So let's figure out how to utilize hers. Heather's happy places in the exam room. And so,
Beautiful. Absolutely.
and we do the same thing with doctors. I have some doctors that dread wellness visits. Like, they just dread it. Like, well, I'm not going to go force them to do that. So, like, figuring out the talent, desires, and giving those opportunities for them on that. And so I think there's not one size that fits all, I think, through that. And I think that's one of the reasons you could be in the career for 30 years. One, like, I mean, I was mixed animal when I first graduated.
Woohoo! Me too.
Awesome. It was fun. It was great. I don't think physically I could probably still be doing what I was doing when I was 25, right? So
I can't tackle a calf anymore.
Yeah. So ability to adapt and grow, but I guess I think us as a profession, we need to, it's a partnership. It's a partnership where we work together and we become, I don't want my doctors to feel like they're below putting in a catheter, right? If LBT is busy, go put the damn catheter in.
You do what you have to do to serve.
Do what you have to do to work together. But you
I'm
also
going
have
to jump in
discuss.
really quick because I'm
Sorry.
watching. I'm watching the time. I'm watching the time. And here's what I think is more important than anything else. We are coming up with one solution. It is time for this profession to stop doing what we've been doing and assuming that the hamster wheel is going to change. And I do appreciate, now we can poke holes in what, Dr. Brown is doing, but he's doing something different. Is it going to potentially, I would love to see salaries at $90,000 to $100,000 for veterinary technicians. I would love to see that we have entry-level care coordinators, at $35 an hour. I would love all of that, but we can't do it in our current model. It doesn't matter if we're going to raise the salaries of technicians. If you don't have those pet owners coming in, you can't pay it. It comes down to just basic economics. And what's going to end up happening is it's an empowered workforce. This workforce will leave. And so we've got to find a way to think differently about our businesses as we look at what we are going to be able to do. And what I really hope is that this is the beginning of thinking differently. How can we, as an individual veterinarian who owns a practice, who is trying to keep the lights on, but wants to keep the mental health. And by the way, we didn't talk about the mental health tonight at all. And we really need to, because the amount of stress that veterinary technicians are under, I'm not even talking about veterinarians. We understand that one. Let's just talk about veterinary technicians. And if you don't know 988, I highly encourage you to know that number. It is critically important that you have it. You can text it, you can call it. If you are in distress, you can call that number. But we're not talking about mental health as well. And all the things that are happening in practice is a direct result on that. I'm a little passionate on that topic. I will say that is something that I do speak very confidently on. But with all of that, I love the amount of chat tonight. I love that we're having this conversation. The Bridge Club, our entire purpose, bring the conversations forward. You have a topic, there's a couple that's come up. Jamie's brought a few more to me. I've been pushing that to a few more people. Let's have more conversations. The only way we can bring this profession together is if we have a conversation. I'm going to say, Casey, she's our Idexx representative tonight. Thank you for being willing to be brave to bring, like, you saw the chat, like,
Yeah,
oh, good Lord.
great.
I love it. And what I would say is now it's time for our closing toast. We're going to do two because I want Dr. Brown to do a toast, but honestly, because this is about technicians, I'm still going to have Jamie do a toast as well. So I hope you all have enough beverage. First time ever in Bridge Club history, 2 toasts. Okay, so everybody, raise your glass. Dr. Brown, who's come up with an innovative idea. I love it. He's got to read a script. Come on, Dr. Brown.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. A big toast to those amazing technicians. They have really been the key to my success and a partner in helping me take care of pets and all those families that love them. As I was laying in bed last night, actually thinking about the Bridge Club and thinking about tonight, I started thinking of, like, what would a veterinary hospital be without a technician? And so the analogy I came up with is it'd be like a car that didn't have an engine, didn't have tires, didn't have doors, didn't have a steering wheel. Like, what are you left with? Just a doctor sitting in the seat that really can't go anywhere. So a big toast to you guys for helping take care of all those 4-legged family members that are out there, and the pets are so much better off because of each and every one.
Okay, cheers to that. I love that. Okay, don't think we're ending yet. By the way, you know that if someone ever raises their glass, you have to actually drink. You can't actually not. So Casey, I hope you're frozen. Okay, so Jamie, your turn, my friend, to end this on a high note this evening. You guys, by the way, I can't thank you all enough. I am going to do one small pitch before we end because it is a veterinary technician founded event. The Veterinary Giving Tree is actually needing donations badly tonight. I know everyone is struggling. $5, $3, whatever you can do. If you can post it out to the Veterinary Giving Tree to help others in the profession in need, I would highly encourage it. Okay, that was my one and only pitch. Let's help the profession. Okay. And over to you, Jamie.
Thank you, Catherine. So I would like to give our final toast and thank Catherine for letting me join you guys tonight. Peter, props to you. I think this is a great concept. I would love to talk to you about it more and get some more information about it.
Reach out directly. Yeah, for sure.
I'll
Absolutely.
connect you. You two are on email. You got it.
Absolutely. So my goal in coming in for NAFTA president was to be able to represent technicians in practice. And that is truly my goal going into my term for the next 2 years. Technicians are a vital part of our everyday life and our practice. And as Peter said, our practices, and his included, would not be able to operate without our technicians. So I'm hoping this evening is one of many going forward with us touching on some topics that everybody, wants to get out there in the open and have some open, honest conversations. I am thrilled to work with an amazing group of technicians every day. And I'm so happy that we came together this evening to talk about this topic. And thank you.
Cheers, everybody.